It's been one of the most contentious issues Canada has had with the Trump White House. While Donald Trump calls tariff a, quote, beautiful word, Canadians have a few other choice words for it. And the bane of cross-border relations is now making its way through the U.S. appeals court. The whiplash started on Thursday. First, the U.S. Federal Trade Court blocked Trump's tariffs on imports under an emergency powers law. It came after multiple lawsuits claimed those levies exceeded his authority. Trump lashed out on social media, saying, if allowed to stand, this would completely destroy presidential power. The presidency would never be the same. And that he hoped the U.S. Supreme Court will reverse this horrible, country-threatening decision quickly and decisively. Then the U.S. Appeals Court swooped in, allowing tariffs to continue, at least temporarily, while this works its way through the court. For more on the political temperature in Washington, David Paterson is joining us. He's Ontario's trade representative in D.C., and he's visiting back in Toronto right now. Great to see you, David. Thanks for coming on the show.
Great to see you too, Mercedes.
Some big court decisions on Friday. First, the tariffs were off, then they're, at least for now, back on. Do those rulings fundamentally change anything for Canada?
Not really. I think we're in the much of the same position. Many people have sort of hoped that we would see the courts intervene on tariffs. Many have hoped that the Congress would step up. But hope is not a strategy. You need to keep on focusing on the things that are impacting your economy. And in our case here in Ontario, there's a different set of tariffs. They call them Section 232 tariffs, which are applied for us on our auto sector and also on our steel sector. And so we really need to keep working hard to make sure that we get those removed. We've made some progress up to now, but it seems like we're at a time where we may be able to make some more with the new federal government stepping into the role, and so we really want to support them in that regard.
David, can you tell us what some of that progress has been and whether you think there might be a window for an accelerated opportunity here to get some things moved forward?
Yeah, I would say that, we really started as the province of Ontario engaging directly with Secretary Lutnick and Trade Ambassador Greer in the United States in early March. You may recall Premier Ford flew down to Washington. I joined him for that meeting. And what we talked about a lot in that meeting was that there are some things that we should be thinking about doing, frankly, in the self-interest of the United States, if nothing else. And because of our trade that is so integrated, we were able to make some progress in areas such as the what are referred to as the IEEPA tariffs that Canada and Mexico first faced. And we were able to, even though we faced this 25% tariff, we were able to find ways for some of that trade that is USMCA compliant, or other words, following that CUSMA deal that we have, for it to trade without being hit by that 25% tariff. It's not perfect, but that allowed some progress. We still have tariffs on our steel products. And in Quebec, largely, they have tariffs still on aluminum. So much more progress needs to be made. And we have to remember that Trump is not finished. He's been talking about doing additional tariffs in areas like pharmaceutical, in areas like lumber. And so what we'd like to do is protect ourselves against some of those going forward as well. So these are sort of interim steps. The federal government is now engaged in trying to make progress in those areas, working with our sectors, working with Ontario. And we hope by the time of the G7 that they can make some further progress in reducing tariffs. And all the while, here in Ontario, Premier Ford is working on things to protect the Ontario economy and to make sure that we're stronger ourselves, that we buy our own steel, that we use it to build things in our own economy. And we're making some progress there too.
When you say by the G7, I mean, that's just around the corner. It's about in 2 weeks. Are you getting a sense from Republicans that you're talking to in Washington that there is an openness in the White House to that kind of progress on that kind of a quick timeline?
Yes, I mean, the president is, through the tariff approach he's taking, which are sort of leveraged deals. They're not really trade agreements. They are deals that are being done with countries around the world where he has put in place a tariff, and he said, I will be so kind as to remove some of those if you will do certain things for me. And some of those things may have to do with certain policies he doesn't like. They may have to do with imbalance in trade. There's a whole variety of those things. And so you have a choice of either engaging, and that's what we do in Washington, and trying to make progress, or sit back and wait for some kind of perfect deal. And I think that could take a long time. So I'm really thrilled that we have Dominic LeBlanc in that role. He's really good. We have fantastic professional people in the embassy in the United States. We're going to support them any way we can to try and push those tariffs, which are primarily automotive and steel right now, push them down. And then let's continue to work that relationship. In the world of Donald Trump, we are now in a world where the formal trade agreements that we like to count on as being enforceable, et cetera, is now turning much more into a world where countries have to protect themselves. And really what you need to ensure is that in the case of Ontario and Canada, that we have a relative competitive advantage in the things that we do. So an example is that there was an agreement, or the start of an agreement, with the UK. And so suddenly we find ourselves in a situation where a vehicle from the United Kingdom now has a lower tariff coming into the United States than a Chevrolet made in Ontario. That doesn't make any sense. And so that's one of the discussion points that we have. We need to make more progress. We, as the signers of the CUSMA agreement, surely should have the best access to the United States market of everyone.
Does that mean that Ontario and the federal government think that it might be a smarter approach to go for a one-on-one deal that can be signed more rapidly between Canada and the U.S. versus the NAFTA-CUSMA approach of Canada-U.S., Mexico?
Well, I think you try and do both, but right now there's one game that is available for people, and you have Japan, South Korea, the United Kingdom, the European Union, Vietnam. All these are in Washington trying to do bilateral deals to improve their trade situation. We were the first in line with these IEEPA tariffs, or the fentanyl tariffs. We've made some progress, but we also have some advantages. We speak American. We have a joint geography. We have a geology that is better, and they need what we have. And so there's lots of advantages, and our education really gets at many of those things. And so you may hear the president say, I don't need your cars, I don't need your natural resources. The truth is they do, and we know they do, and they know they do. And so that makes for a really good setup for us in terms of being able to make progress. We'd like to get to perfection, but let's make progress first, and let's make sure at the same time that we help our industries here at home and help Ontarians through this transition.
Have you noticed a shift in the tone in Washington towards Canada since Mark Carney was elected Prime Minister?
Yeah, I think that we've seen that progressively, and the Premier always says we have not had a bad call. We've probably talked to 100 senators, Republican senators and members over the last year. I certainly have. I have not had a bad meeting with any of them. They love Canada. Their economies are together with ours, but they are giving the president, who won the election, the time to be able to take forward this agenda that he's doing. They're not pushing back on that in any meaningful way. And then just recently we had a visit from a number of very significant U.S. senators in Ottawa, the lead of which was Republican Senator Kevin Cramer from North Dakota. He's somebody that the Premier's developed a tremendous relationship with. He understands how integrated our economy is. Fargo, North Dakota is a big producer of farm equipment. The biggest customer, Canada. Ontario is the biggest customer for 17 states, and 11 others were number 2. So people get up in the United States to make stuff that we buy. And so a big thing that they understand and that we remind them is we're your biggest supplier and we're your biggest customer. So put us first in line, and in your own self-interest, let's get these tariffs down and start getting some certainty into the economy, because the biggest enemy for both the U.S., Canada, and the world is uncertainty where businesses cannot make investment decisions. And that is a message that I think is really resonating in Congress and is really resonating increasingly with even people in the White House.
David Paterson, thanks for joining us and for your work representing Ontario, but in a way all of Canada too, in Washington. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Mercedes.